Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our virtual Meet the Expert workshop. My name is Stefan, and I am part of the My World of Work Live team here at Skills Development Scotland. My World of Work Live is about helping you understand future careers and what skills these careers may require. So in today's session, we're going to have a quick overview of the finance sector. We're going to take a look at some of the opportunities within the sector, and I'm then going to introduce you to our two experts for today in Diane Dixon, who is a management accountant at CIMA, also known as the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants. And then we've got Katherine McArdle, the senior project accountant at BAE Systems. We would encourage you to get involved as much as possible, so please feel free to use the questions section, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we possibly can. I would just like to let you know that today's session is being recorded, so that anybody that could not make it will still have access to the resources. This will be made available for you to watch again. If there's something you would like to maybe watch again or hear again, you can pick that up on the My World of Work YouTube channel. That means that you can go back and look at everything that has been spoke about today, and again, you'll be able to get the links there to see further expert sessions. At the end of the session, a feedback link will also be provided, and we ask that you spare a couple of minutes to take the opportunity to fill that out. This information allows us to improve the sessions going forward. Also, please don't worry, everything you do ask is anonymous, and you can choose that once again in the Q&A. So just before I introduce you to today's two experts, let's have a look at some of the information for the finance sector. So the industry now, 190,200 people currently work in the finance services industry in Scotland. As of 2020, the median advertised salary for jobs in this industry was 35,100. Financial service adds an estimated 9 and a bit million to the overall Scottish economy, and there are around 28,865 businesses operating in the sector already. The future, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the jobs market is constantly changing. All future figures are estimated. So the industry will need an estimated 13,000 jobs to be replaced or created between 2020 and 2023. So we're already in the middle of that time frame. Replacement need for the sector is predicted to grow to 28,000 jobs between 2023 and 2030. Customer service roles will continue to be important, especially within the development of new technology roles like the banking apps as well. So hopefully this gives you a bit of an insight into the labour market for the finance sector. I'm just going to now give you a quick introduction to both our experts. So well, Diane Dixon. Diane has worked with CIMA for over 11 years and looks after the Scotland region, working with universities, schools and colleges. Diane also has a strong network with employers who are able to offer CIMA students the opportunity to study their accountancy qualification. And CIMA is all about business and finance with the aim of looking forward. So I'm just going to pass over to Diane firstly.
Hi everyone, and thank you for joining this session. So I work for CIMA, which is the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, and where that kind of fits into the world of work is if you're wanting to be a professional chartered accountant and you want to become qualified, then CIMA is a qualification that you might choose to follow. And as Stefan was saying before, it's all about business and finance. So everything you do as a chartered management accountant is all about looking forward. So you may get involved in things like budgeting, forecasting, decision making, strategy, costing. So if you can imagine a management accountant may be looking at a business and they'll be deciding the best way to take that business forward. So they'll be looking at lots of different elements of that company and trying to decide where they can make it more cost effective or increase the profits. And so sometimes they'll get involved in new product development, or it may be that they have to work closely with suppliers and manufacturers so that they can improve the cost side of the business as well. So it's all about looking forward. And one of the things that I realised coming into CIMA before was I always thought accounting and finance was just about number crunching and just about, you know, tax and doing someone's books. But when I've come to CIMA, I've realised it's a whole other level and another world, you know, and it's important that you understand the numbers, but you really want to know the story behind the numbers and how you can make that company better. So management accounting is all about looking forward. We work with a lot of companies as well, and you're going to hear from Kat very shortly. In the world of management accounting as well, it's not just about finance. So you may find that you can go and work in consultancy or in an analyst role. You might even go into operational roles, HR, IT. We've even known people to go on to work in graduate recruitment, which I have done. And a lot of companies will give you the option to study the qualification as part of a graduate scheme or an apprenticeship, or, you know, a trainee accountant position. And those are the opportunities that you might be looking for in the future, where you're wanting to become a chartered accountant, but you're not sure why and how you're going to go about that. And often the best way is to do it with an employer. So you've got that full support, you've got the training, they're paying for you to go through all of your exams, and most importantly, get the right practical work experience as well.
Thank you, Diane. So that was a really good, in a nutshell, explanation there and giving a bit of context. So thank you. I'm just going to pass over to Katherine now. And just before I do, Katherine is currently a project accountant working on submarine contracts in Barrow-in-Furness. Katherine has worked previously in different roles, working with aircrafts while living in Preston. And Katherine has also studied accounting and finance at Strathclyde University in Glasgow, where she was born and raised. So, Katherine, thank you for joining the call as well. I'm just going to pass over to you there now.
Yep, perfect. So, as Stefan was saying, I'm Katherine. Diane might call me Kat. Feel free to whatever name you prefer. It doesn't bother me. So, as I was saying, I'm a senior project accountant. A little bit about what that means. So Diane mentioned that you might have a view of accounting, sometimes working in tax or invoicing, doing some books, and that's not what I do essentially. So what I currently do is I am a project accountant, and I look after Boat 1 of the Dreadnought submarine programme that is currently based down in Barrow-in-Furness. What that sort of involves is I work with the massive project team in order to help deliver that programme. Just a bit of the context. On the Dreadnought programme, a submarine probably takes anywhere between 10 and 30 years to deliver, and the first boat will probably go out in 2030, which is quite a long time away. So what I do is try and work with different reviews and meetings to look at how the programme is progressing, any issues that we need to go on to look at that. Additionally, on top of that, I also sometimes get the privilege, shall we say, of getting to go to different tours and visits. Being based in Barrow at the moment, the submarine is in the water. I could walk in and see her, which is a really nice like perk of the job. When I previously worked on aircraft, I worked on an active site that had a runway, so I heard the jets taking off and landing as well. So it's definitely about being in that business and living and breathing what the product is, rather than sitting behind a screen crunching numbers. You do spend a lot of time in spreadsheets, but you're doing that for the goal of helping propel the business forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Katherine, for that. And so I'm just going to kick off here now with a few questions that have come in. And Katherine, the first question is aimed at you. So what tasks would you say you do on a daily basis?
So accounting works less on a daily basis and more on a monthly cycle. So it depends on what week I walk in essentially. If I take something, for example, my business week's a month end. So what that means is that I take the actuals that sort of have landed in the business. So that's all the hours that have been worked, the cost that associated. And on top of that, it then means that we also take the material costs in, we plug that into the system and that gets fed in. What we then do on top of that is forecast the future costs. and where we think things are going to go and how we're going to meet budgets. If we move away from what we originally budgeted at the beginning of the year, we have to discuss all that variance. So you get into things like variance analysis. You talk about any opportunities and risks. Separate to that, when we're doing normal big forecasts, we probably work on a quarterly cycle. So what that happens and what that means is you've got a really big contract, so you want to chunk it up a bit. We get all the programs to do a massive reforecast every 3 months. We then go to manager forecasts. We act as a bit of a challenge, and also with some of our expertise, keep them in line with governance. So make sure that they're sort of playing by the rules and following the rules, and that's a really big thing. The thing that I've also heard of that I think is quite good to what I do is that you're sort of the conscience of the business, and so you keep everyone sort of working together.
Thank you. Kat, I'm going to stick with you for the next question just before I come over to Diane. So the question is, what made you join BAE?
Yeah, so I was born in Glasgow, and I don't know that it's in Glasgow or not. We've got the shipyard down on the Clyde, and BAE is who runs the shipyard. So I've known about the ships on the Clyde and BAE since I was quite young. I wasn't quite sure that I wanted to go into accounting. It took me a while to figure that out, I think. And then what happened was I went to university to study accounting and finance. BAE had come in, did a bit of a talk, and then I actually did a summer internship down in Glasgow. Glasgow's pretty much the main site for Scotland for BAE. I think we've got maybe about, in total, probably about 5,000 people. The finance team is a relatively small part of that. It's between 30 and 50, depending on where we are in programs. Just for reference, I think Glasgow is building, you might have heard of the Type 26s. They're the frigates that we're building at the moment. So that's sort of what got me into BAE. It's a really well-known company. You probably hear about it in the news. That's how I'd sort of come across it.
Excellent, thank you. Dan, I'm going to come across to you now, and I have a couple of questions there coming in for you as well. So the first question I would like to ask is, do I need to go to university or college to get into these types of areas?
So CIMA is a qualification on its own, but you don't have to have studied a particular subject to start CIMA. We have different entry points for you if you want to study CIMA. Some, like Kat, some students will maybe go to college or they might go to university, but a lot of employers who will sponsor you to do the CIMA qualification won't be necessarily looking for an accounting and finance degree. And I know Kat herself will have started with other students on her programme when she studied the qualification, and they may have come from history, geography, sciences, so lots of different backgrounds. And I think what's quite key about graduate recruitment now, and has been for the last kind of 10 years or so, it's not just about your qualifications, it's also about what skills you have. So communication, team working, problem solving, being able to, analyse information and show that you've done something a bit different. So certainly you can come into CIMA without any qualifications, but one of the key elements is that practical work experience, and that's where the employers come in.
Excellent. And I think then, you've answered the next question there, really, in terms of what skills are more important to your role. But would you like to expand on that? I know you mentioned their communication, but is there any other skills that are important to do your role?
I think it's about being able to adapt and be flexible. And of course, in the last couple of years, we've all had to do that during the pandemic. I think management accountants, they have to have a real understanding of business and finance and have a good understanding of how all the different departments in an organisation work together. So it's not just about you sat in finance or, in a part of the business. Katherine is obviously working with, the submarine division. So she really has to get her head around how that all works. What is the engineering side of it? Who is the company that's going to be buying that product? Think about the suppliers you might be using. There could be challenges there around currency, in terms of, you know, if you're buying a particular product from another country that's going to be used on the submarine, you know, looking at the pricing of that. So you really have to kind of adapt and change as you go along, you know, through your job. And I'd say that's quite key for management accountants.
Excellent. And then again, you've sort of touched on the next question as well, in terms of like what your advice would be for anybody. And again, what would be your key point of advice to anybody looking to get into this roller sector?
So often when I speak to students, whether that be at schools, colleges or universities, one of the things I say, you know, if you're in a part-time job, and it can be any part-time job, or you could be doing some voluntary work or involved in, you know, coaching other people how to play football or do swimming, think about the skills that you're gaining from those activities. You know, are you dealing with customers? Are you working in a team? Are you problem solving? Are you dealing with cash? So have you got some responsibility? And think about how those skills can then translate into another job with an employer. And because they're all transferable skills, and it doesn't matter what background you've come from. And I would say in any of those part-time jobs, no matter what you're doing and what you're involved in, there will be finance involved in there somewhere. So getting to maybe understand what your colleagues are doing, or if you were to work for, you know, a retailer such as New Look, for example, as a retail shop, you know, there is an accounting and finance department somewhere. So speak to them. What are the opportunities maybe to do some work shadowing, or really understand the business side rather than just the customer focus side. So it's always one of the key things I would always say to students is business awareness. So keeping yourself up to date with what's going on in the world of business, whether that be reading the BBC news pages, you know, watching the news, just keeping your eye on what's going on in the world, because at the moment, obviously, it changes very quickly, and it's good to see what sectors are doing well, some sectors that could be doing better, and just get, I suppose, more interested in the world of business, because that will really help you when you go to apply for jobs and apply and help you with your interviews and assessment centres as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, again, thank you. That was a really good answer there as well. Dan, I've got one more question for you before I come back to Katherine again. If I was interested in CIMA, how would I apply for a CIMA qualification?
So the first thing that you could do is register as a CIMA student, which you can do on the CIMA Global website, and I know that the link will be shared with you afterwards. And alternatively, though, if you're at the stage of looking for internships or placements or jobs, then you could wait till you got to your employer, and they may take you through the, you know, the qualification and register your student. But if you want to have a look at it now and maybe get a bit of a head start on your career and your chartered accountancy qualification, then you could have a look at CIMA Global and actually register as a student, because that opens up a whole other world of employability subjects. There's lots of research papers you can look at. There's some interactive tools. So it gives you access to resources that you might not have at the moment. And also it looks really good on your CV and application forms when you come to look for employers who might sponsor you to do your qualification.
Brilliant, Dan. And we've got some links at the end of the session as well to obviously give a good starting point. So Katherine, I'm going to come back to you for the next few questions, and something that Diane had obviously touched on there as well, but I think it's nice to get your perspective as well. And could you just tell the young people listening about what type of subjects you would recommend they take at school?
Yeah, so the only one I would recommend is maths. Not because you definitely need it, but just that's the only one that really sometimes falls into it. For me, I went to university and maths was a part of me getting into university. It's one of the stipulation factors. I did a variety of subjects, mainly based around science. But I'd say just stick to your core subjects. I'd say English, maths will pretty much get you in and things like that. The reason that I say that is I know plenty of people that have joined my business at the same time as me and stuff like that. And I have some people that did do a history degree. One did modern languages, another did midwifery. So it's really not fully about how much you've got in accounting or finance as well. Business, if your school offers it, is often can be a good thing. Gets you into a bit more to know about businesses. But the great thing about CIMA, when you walk in, if you're doing it through an employer, is it will take you from the ground up. So it will teach you everything that you need to know. So there's less you need to come into it. I would also say try not be put off. Some people might be put off by too much maths. I'll be honest, I'm not the best at mental maths. People laugh at me when they try and ask me questions, and they're like, "Oh, but you're an accountant, you must be good at maths." I'm pretty average at maths. That's not really a big part of my role. There is a level, and all I'd say is you have to be comfortable with numbers is the best thing I'd say. A lot of what I do is really big data sets, so it just seems like a large volume of information. So if you're good at picking out things that are different or things that look a bit funny or out of place, that's actually more of a better skill than sometimes the old friend of Pythagoras that I've never used, like in accounting and finance. So it does transfer to some extent, but maybe not as much as you would initially think.
Excellent, Katherine. I think as well, like, such an authentic answer, and a lot of what you're saying there as well really links into what Diane was saying in regards to, like, the qualifications are important, but they're not the be all and end all as well. So thank you for that. Katherine, the next question as well, and again, Diane has touched on it from her perspective, but what skills would you say you would recommend for young people?
So skills wise, if I look at what I do myself, is most of my job is communication, in all honesty, and it's different types of communication. So when I'm working, yes, a lot of things I do is looking at numbers and information. But then once you've got all that, you need to communicate it to someone. Now, depending on what it is, depends on what way you need to communicate it. So with what I work in, you have a lot of finance to finance conversations, so that's relatively simple. You can get into nitty-gritty detail about things. But then I might work with someone that works in engineering and just doesn't have the first thing about finance, and it's sort of having to like explain the impact of things and sort of like find a language that we can commonly use in order for them to understand. Another thing is just sometimes resilience and adaptability. Things don't always go well. Unfortunately, you walk in and sometimes things have gone badly and you need to solve that problem. And that problem would be there in the day. And sometimes you're at the beginning, you're just like, I do not know how I'm going to fix this. We're just going to take it step by step and we'll get through it. So sometimes having a bit of a calm level head as well, and really taking a step back from that situation also works quite well.
Brilliant. Katherine, I've got one more question for you before I come back to Diane again, okay? And the question really is, are there any specific projects that stand out for you that you're really proud of being part of?
Yeah, so I'm proud of pretty much everything that I've worked on. The big one for me at the moment is currently what I'm working on. So I'm obviously part of delivering the Dreadnought programme, which is a programme of national significance. It's a programme that all of submarines sort of help keep us safe, and it helps keep the UK safe. Some people might have a different opinion to that, but for me it's something that's really worthwhile and rewarding, that I've always wanted to be a part of. And when you get to see one of the boats leave, it's quite a proud moment for you, and it's something that I definitely will always be happy, like I'll look back on, because they are long programs, and I'll always look back on and know that I had a part to play in that.
Yeah, certainly. So thank you for that, Katherine. Dan, I'm going to come back to you again, and I know again Katherine touched on it, but it's good to get your perspective from somebody that deals with the CIMA qualification and in general. And what would you say about somebody needing maths to be an accountant?
I think Katherine really did kind of say it in a nutshell, and I think it's important that you understand the numbers. So if you're wanting to be a CIMA member, be CIMA qualified, be a management accountant, and bearing in mind what I said at the beginning, which is all about looking forward and helping the business grow, you still have to understand the financial accounting side of it. So whilst you might not be directly involved in looking back at the past and understanding what happened, you know, last year, last month, you still have to interpret that information, because without that and without that knowledge, you wouldn't be able to plan your budget, you wouldn't be able to forecast what your spend is on a particular project for a submarine. You've got to be able to plan. So it's having the story behind the numbers which really helps you forward. So yeah, maths is important, but all of your other subjects and skills are important as well. And it's all about interpreting that information. And as Kat said, it's about sometimes identifying, well, hang on a minute, that doesn't look right, or you know, I'm not going to be able to plan my budget without understanding more of this. So it's important that you kind of have a really good sense of all financial management accounting as well as business awareness.
Yeah, so that experience really sounds quite important as well, just as much as the subjects, if not more. So Dan, thank you. And a question as well, Dan, in regards to the pandemic, something that many organizations, every individual has been affected by across the world, and some organizations have felt it positively, some much more negatively. Could you tell me how you have been affected by the pandemic?
We've been very fortunate as a organisation and a qualification. So we're a professional qualification for management accountants. And one of the things that we did very well at the start of the pandemic was adapt. And I've said this a few times. I know Katherine has said that word as well. So it's a key theme through the last 18 months. All of our exams are online, and normally you would go to a test centre to sit that particular exam, and Kat will have sat her exams while she was on the programme with BAE Systems. And what we did is, because obviously all the test centres closed, is we introduced remote-based testing. So as you could actually still continue your CIMA studies, but you could do your exam at home or wherever was comfortable for you. And that worked very well for us. And I would say on a positive note that there's lots and lots of opportunities out there for trainee accountants, apprenticeships, graduate jobs in the world of finance and accounting. I use LinkedIn a lot. I don't know how many of you use LinkedIn, but it's a great source for finding opportunities. And certainly accountants, management accountants, finance people are still key to how a business works. So lots of opportunities out there. And if anything, I would say the market's really healthy.
Amazing. I think that's really powerful to hear that, considering the past 2 years with the pandemic. So again, thank you. Dan, one of the questions that has come on, again, you've touched on it in terms of apprenticeship opportunities, but one of the young people have said they've heard about foundation apprenticeships as the one that they could do in this area.
So there is a foundation apprenticeship, and you can do that in Scotland. I know Sky as an employer have apprenticeship opportunities, and you may find some smaller accountancy businesses have apprenticeship opportunities too. So again, I know the best place sometimes to look for these are through Skills Development Scotland. I know there's an apprenticeship website as well that you can go and have a look at. But again, going back to LinkedIn, if you are thinking about doing some sort of apprenticeship, then sometimes it's just easier to search on LinkedIn, because a lot of employers will post on there because it's free for them to do so. And it's also really good for building up your professional network and finding the right people to talk to. So yes, there are apprenticeships available, and but also there's other opportunities in terms of maybe going straight into a role and being like an accounts assistant or a trainee accountant, where you're going to get a similar experience as well.
Yeah, and Dan, just before I come back over to Katherine, one of the things that obviously Katherine had mentioned about like projects that she was maybe proud of and stuff, from a CIMA point of view as the qualification, is there any projects that you've worked on in particular that stand out in your mind that you're really proud of?
I think I would say overall, what I'm really proud of is hearing from CIMA members like Kat, who they've done the qualification, and the qualification has made a difference to their career, to their salaries, to the organisation that they work for. So, you know, it's hard work. You know, doing a professional accountancy qualification is hard work. You know, Kat will have had to work. She would have had to study at the same time. Often she would have been studying outside. I can see her smiling now. She would have been studying outside her working hours. She may have had to go to tuition. At the same time, she's managing relationships in the business. She's been asked to do things by maybe senior managers. You know, so normally it takes you about 3 years to fully qualify, but it's hard work. And going through all of those different hurdles while you've got stuff going on in your life as well, you know, it is hard. But to get then fully qualified and work for a company like BAE, where she's now delivering those projects, and she says she's proud to see a submarine, you know, launching, and once she's worked on that project, you know, CIMA members really do make a difference to the business. And that's something that I'm really proud of, is helping students decide maybe to take the CIMA qualification and go on through to membership.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Dan. And Katherine, just coming back to you again, obviously, like from your perspective, COVID may have had a similar impact in terms of the sector, but how did COVID impact you as an individual? Because you're obviously still learning the organisation and trying to improve there as well. So how did that affect you as a person?
Yeah, so I think COVID was pretty tough for us, just in a sense of view that when I worked in the office 5 days a week, every single week and things like that, and then suddenly that became not viable, shall we say, and we ended up working from home. Now our infrastructure is not really set up for 8 to 10,000 people working at home. It's just not what we've done in the past. Yeah. So we had to like change and adapt. Also on that, when everyone was sent home, we stopped making submarines. As my managing director used to say, you can't make submarines in a garage. You actually have to be on site. So we had to like think about people's safety, getting involved in conversations with our customer around what could be funded, how do we change the site to make sure it's safe, and then how do we recover those costs. We also had to think about cash liquidity. So we had to think about that people still need paid. We still need to get a wage to them. So we had to really think about managing that. So it was pretty tough for us at the beginning, I'd say, especially because you had an awful lot on your plate and then you were at home. For us, I'm still at home and have been for a long time, and I had moved to the area. So that made it a bit harder for me. But what we've found is that we've still delivered everything that we need to deliver. We've still focused on getting the outputs out the door, keeping the business going, and keeping the programmes ticking along and doing what we need to do it. It's also been really nice to get to know people in a different sense. You get to hear people's children on the phone quite often, and you see their dogs running around in the background. So it's been nice to get to know people on a different level. And I think the big thing that we remarked of is that normally when you start a meeting or a call, you say, right, hi, how are you? And that's just the way you start at the beginning of the call. Whereas now, when you're asking someone how they are, it really matters. And so the personal side of things really came together. I think it became a stronger team for that.
Thank you, Katherine. That's a very powerful answer. So really, really well addressed there. So, Katherine, COVID aside, with your organisation, is there any like roles or specific things that you would find more challenging than others? So you had mentioned that maths, when that mental maths is being asked, but is there other things there that you would find challenging within your job role?
The most challenging thing is people. people are unique and they have their own personalities and they have their own way of addressing situations, and maybe they have different priorities to you. So it can be pretty tough having certain conversations with certain individuals. And that's probably the hardest part of it, is how do you get someone to see your point of view? How do you see someone else's point of view? And then how do you compromise on that? There's some conversations that you know are not going to go well. And you're just trying to like build yourself up to those conversations sometimes. But at the end of the day, when we think about it, we're doing things for the good of the business. We're doing things to move things forward. So as long as you keep that in mind, it's not too tough.
Yeah, definitely. So Katherine, I'm just mindful of time for the session as well. So the last question I'm going to finish off with, and then I'll ask Diane the same question. But what would be your best piece of advice to a young person that is considering a career in accountancy?
I think the best thing I'd say is just to learn a bit more about it. I think the beauty of accounting is that you don't have to do it always right now. So if you're maybe just thinking about it, get to know a little bit more about it, you might change your mind and go off to do something else. But accounting's going to still be there. And that's the whole thing, that it's not the same as going into something like medicine, where you sort of have to make your decision now, and when you make your decision now, you're sort of stuck with it and it's a bit hard to go back. You could maybe go into like reskill or go into like university and something different and then come back into it. So it's always there and about. Another good thing that I'd say is give it a try. So a big bit of that is you can also sometimes try, if you work in certain clubs or organisations, they might have a treasurers. Try and get involved in that. If you know other like charities sometimes will take on volunteers, give it a go. I don't think you know if you're going to like something or get to know about it until you have a bit of a taster of it.
Yeah, Katherine, thank you for that, and I really appreciate your time as well. So Dan, I'm going to come back to you and just basically put that same question to you. Like, what would be your ideal point for a young person to take away from today's session?
I would actually echo everything that Katherine said there. Is think about, if you're sitting in your lecture theatre or your classroom and there's 30 of you all studying, the same subject, what makes you stand out from the crowd? So what do you do different to your friend or your colleague sitting next to you? How can you do something different to give yourself that edge? So whether it's getting involved in clubs or societies, things outside of your learning, or there might be things actually at your school or your college that you can get involved in. So the more that you can do, the more will help to build up those employability skills and those transferable skills, regardless of accountancy. So putting accountancy to the back of your head, but just think about, well, what can I do to make myself different and stand out?
Definitely. Thank you. Really, really well put together from the two of you there, and we really, really appreciate that. So I'm just mindful of the time. So you can find out more about careers at www.myworldofwork.co.uk. You'll find lots of information there that can help you make choices about your career. And if you also need some further inspiration on what to do, there are also tools on there that will help you to understand things like your strengths or even explore some jobs. If you want to learn more about apprenticeships in Scotland, you can check out apprenticeships.scot as another good starting point. And for information on digital careers, again, you can check out digitalworld.net. You can also speak to your school careers advisor, as they would have much more information and much more guidance available to you within the school setting. So that's us come to the end of today's session. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to say a huge thank you to both our experts, Diane and Katherine, for taking the time to join us today and providing such a valuable insight into the job roles and the sector as a whole. I personally found it really interesting, and I hope that you have too. So thank you to everybody that has also taken the time to join us today. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session, it has been recorded, so you can view it as many times as you like, and you can do this by going to the My World of Work YouTube channel. Finally, a big thank you once again to everybody for joining, and I hope you have a good day.